Russia is very offended by the fact that in the civilized world, they are considered wild, backward, rude, and excessively drinking people. Russia is convinced that this image from Western propaganda does not represent a nation of wealthy people who were the first to fly into space and dance the nutcracker better than anyone else. You do this well. You really do. You know, in fact, before the eventual collapse of the Soviet Union, there were many significant events that led to its eventual dissolution. Russians were associated with stereotypes, ballet, ushanka hats, nuclear bombs. But when the mask came off, there was nothing underneath. The Russian tourist entered the wider world, and they truly showed the authentic and true face of the Russian world, revealing its complexities. The Russian tourist is Russia's most famous brand. Rudeness, poverty, lack of boundaries, greed for others, disregard for the country they are in, and a pathological reluctance to wear a t-shirt in public places. 7 police officers couldn't restrain a Russian tourist who had drunk too much while vacationing on Coral Island Beach in Phuket, Thailand. You look around and you see a whole festival for Russians. The trait of the Russian tourist is that he deliberately behaves discontentedly and insistently so that everyone knows he is Russian. A typical Russian tourist staying in a hotel is very much like a homeless person riding on a tram, in terms of their general demeanor and presence. Everyone feels uncomfortable, both the staff and the other vacationers. But you don't want to touch him because he'll smell. Russians are convinced that everyone owes them something. The situation with the behavior of boorish tourists actually improved during Putin's rule. And that's no coincidence. Putin's propaganda aggressively encouraged chauvinistic and fascist beliefs among the population. They say that Russians are the greatest, everyone should fear and respect them, and that Europeans are weak, Americans are fools. And overall, Russians can do whatever they want, because they defeated Hitler. As a direct result, under Putin's current regime, a profound arrogance and a strong sense of entitlement have significantly grown, and this entire mass of people poured into the popular resorts of Egypt and Turkey. Of course, the locals were happy with the influx of customers, but very soon they realized what kind of people they were dealing with. The Turks were especially struck by the fact that things were being stolen. Russian tourists stole everything, from free slippers to food from the hotel. Representatives of the so-called superpower were literally taking food home with them.
Girls, it's truly wonderful to consider the thought and effort that goes into selecting and presenting gifts. Indeed, gifts are a delightful way to express appreciation, affection, and celebrate special occasions. It's all about the joy of giving and receiving these thoughtful tokens. Okay, let's focus on the gift. Every day, quietly, quietly, quietly. This is every day. Oh, how I love this.
Homeland, well, training. Although, it's not surprising, if even at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, German delegates started stampeding for a doll. Bang, bang.
Forward. Let's go now. We'll also go back again.
Let's go. Just imagine what Russians typically do in Turkey at all-inclusive resorts.
We don't know what it is. If we knew what it was, we wouldn't know what it is.
To be completely honest, it must be said that Russians not only take food from Turkish hotels, sometimes they even bring it with them, because salaries in the ocean and gas country aren't enough for food.
People fly to Turkey with their own meat and sausages. The borders have gotten worse, but nothing will stop a Russian.
My name is Alina. I'm from Europe.
How many days did you come here? 10.
More? Finances don't allow it. Turkey cost me $52,000. The ports, it seems to me, have increased by 2 to 3 times. So I brought it with me. And sausages, and our dried seeds.
Russian tourists are not moral. They are always dissatisfied with everything, and almost always the alcohol level in their blood exceeds normal standards. And I noticed one difference here. Of all the Russians vacationing here, they are always drinking beer. Absolutely always. For breakfast, for the evening, for dinner, before bed, at night, even when they're sleeping. It seems to me that they're always drinking beer.
The Turkish island is a favorite place for fascist Russian tourists. The service here is excellent, and the price is affordable. But Russian tourists wouldn't be Russian tourists if they didn't leave a mess in the place where they came to relax. It really makes me hate it when they start slandering Turkey. Oh, how expensive everything has become. Oh, how bad everything has become. The people are bad. The culture is bad. Everything is bad. Where is better? Oh, when I first came here, everything was wonderful. Now everything has become bad. Well, yeah, damn it, you arrived and everything got worse. It's all because of you.
As a result, in fact, the behavior of Russians in Turkey started to change dramatically, and not for the better. More and more often, Russians started getting beaten up in the streets, kicked out of hotels, and kicked out of the country.
I got kicked out of Turkey. And no, it wasn't a fight. My mom and I went to Antalya to relax. We hadn't been to countries hostile to Turkey. Besides, we had vacationed in Turkey before. Now it was time to go through passport control. It's stressful. But then a military policeman started checking our passports in a strange and drawn-out manner. He had held out passports for inspection, but we didn't know whose it was. After he scanned it and spent another 10 minutes examining the passport with all sorts of different tools, a phrase was heard. You need to come with us to the police.
After the aggressive invasion of Ukraine, the image of Russians in Turkey improved even more. Turkish tour operators even have a special service, accommodation in a hotel where there are no Russians. In fact, the connection with the lepers is obvious. Who are you? I didn't invite you. Let's go. Russian tourists began to complain en masse about the poor and accusatory behavior of the Turks. Russian tourists noticed that they were being served much worse than people from other countries. They are deliberately placed in bad rooms, served low-quality alcohol, and other guests don't want to sit at tables with Russians. Oh my goodness. What in the world am I possibly going to do with you now, my dear friend?
Come here. Come here now.
Turkish authorities also began to actively respond to the repeated complaints of Muscovites who had recently arrived. For example, they recounted the story of 2 Russian tourists who, not having fully sobered up, arrived in Turkey and subsequently caused a scene right at the airport. The police did not stand on ceremony with the army of Lermontov and Dostoevsky. They didn't cut them any slack at all. And after the policewoman eventually arrived on the scene, they immediately put handcuffs on us, and she then violently hit us on the head and face repeatedly. After that, they immediately took us to all the relevant authorities, meticulously took our fingerprints, carefully photographed us, and then subsequently brought us to a very cold, dark, and desolate detention center. After the start of the full-scale war, Turkey was not only overwhelmed by Russian tourists, but also by emigrants. Millions died here due to mobilization and the growing economic apocalypse. In 1922, Russians became the dominant group in Turkish prisons. But Turkey was not at all happy about this. Very quickly, local authorities began sending Russians back on Russian ships. And when the chaos with the prisons began and mass deportations started, I realized that this was some kind of pre-election story. And accordingly, the locals were living with such a large number of newcomers that they simply started refusing everyone without exception. And in addition to the refusals, many people simply destroyed their own housing. Russians were marked out in housing en masse. For every 100 refusals, there were 250 refusals. The problem with the refusals wasn't explained, but everyone understood it. No one wants people who think that everything they've occupied is theirs.
Well, you know, we have an old well. It's not exactly a proverb, not a parable, but an old, well-known government saying that is quite familiar. She lived in Turkey many years, but her son and grandchildren have been in Ukraine for several months now. She and a dedicated group of committed activists have been consistently protesting here, right in the very heart of Istanbul, every single day since Russia's full-scale war with Ukraine originally began in February. Ukraine. According to her, Russian visitors clearly show their distrust of the representatives. And this is not an isolated case, says Alina. Truly, Putin, General.
It's not always limited to rallies and petitions. Sometimes, preventing Russian fascism involves some exotic methods. Let us now recall in detail how the Ukrainian football players from the FC Minaj team encountered Russian athletes at a Turkish hotel and subsequently cheered them up, emphatically telling them that they had truly left the land of the dead.
The main reason because some Russians entered the dining area, started drinking, and behaved rudely toward a girl. Well, our talented footballer Daniel Kolesnik approached him, I think, very wisely, and even quite calmly, and then told him, "I'll tell you in Russian exactly what you need to do right now." And then he started hitting him.
I only heard a man in the hallway chanting glory to Ukraine. I said Negro, Russian words, and that was it, and everything kicked off.
There is a constant and pervasive negative attitude towards Russians within the region. People don't want to talk to them, even if they're around them. And that's why we want to thank the Russian tourists. Because their red and blue faces showed the world the true soul of Russia, or rather, the lack of it.
I'll tell you, I don't know any Russians, but Ukrainians, in my opinion, are very good people. Ukrainians? And what do you think about Russians? I won't say anything at all. I see Ukrainians most often. They come and go. They are truly beautiful. Very sociable individuals, not at all like Syrians. Subtitles by Dimatorzak.
I would like to remind you that this video is created for entertainment purposes and contains elements of satire and irony. All facts and events are presented in a hyperbolized or exaggerated form to convey a comedic or dramatic effect. Our goal is not to mislead, but to highlight humor. Please take it with a smile.